Um, we are going to go ahead and get started with the Constitution so that everybody can learn uh, all about the Constitution. So, with that said, this video is for educational and informative purposes only. It is intended for anyone that is interested in this content. We're talking about the United House of Prayer for All People and the corruption within the leadership. As such, tonight we're going to begin touching on the Constitution. So if you want to pause real quick, give you a chance to get a pad and some a pen so you can take notes. Okay. I'm going to be doing this in 30-minute increments. Since it is the Constitution, it should be fairly easy for me to do this, somewhere around 30 minutes or so. But let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be showing you the information. I'm going to be covering quite a bit of information, actually, but we're going to walk you through as slowly but as detailed as possible so that you'll understand. When a nonprofit files for tax-exempt status with the IRS, they must include a copy of their bylaws in addition to the application. So we have constitutions and bylaws. So because the tax-exempt status, the tax-exempt application, rather, is public record, because you have to include your bylaws with the application, then indirectly, as an extension of the application, then the Constitution and the bylaws also become public records. So I just needed to make sure that I wasn't doing anything that would present a problem. So anyway, the nonprofits, their application is public record and their bylaws are public record. So because it's public record, you can show it. That said, you don't need a copy. I'm going to be showing you, this is the 2009 Constitution. Okay, so every page that I show you, you can freeze frame and take a picture. So you'll have your own Constitution. So here, okay, and that way you'll be able to follow along as we're reading. Okay. We're going to go ahead and get started here. So this is the Constitution and bylaws of the United House of Prayer for All People. This is the 2022 version. This is the 2023. Same cover. But we are going to be going by the 2009 version because there has been all kinds of changes in the 2022 and the 2023 versions of the Constitution. We're not going to be using them. So let's go ahead and talk about this. Now, I'm going to go through the Constitution first. Then, in another video, we're going to come back and we're going to show you the differences between the 2009 and the 2022 and 23. Okay? You're going to be alarmed and upset. So let's go ahead and start this. The Constitution and bylaws of the United House of Prayer for all people of the Church on the Rock of the Apostolic Faith. Registered trademark. The Honorable C.M. Bailey, Bishop and Leader, May 2009. Constitution and bylaws of the United House of Prayer for all people of the Church on the Rock of the Apostolic Faith. Inside leaflet. Constitution and bylaws. Promulgated and proclaimed to be the Constitution and bylaws for the government of the United House of Prayer for all people of the Church on the Rock of the Apostolic Faith, this first day of July 1929 at the city of Newport News, Virginia, by Bishop C.M. Grace, Bishop and founder of the United House of Prayer for all people of the Church on the Rock of the Apostolic Faith, by the authority vested in him as such. Signed, C.M. Grace, Bishop. Now, simply says, the Constitution and bylaws is for the government of the United House of Prayer for all people. This booklet is to govern the United House of Prayer for all people. Sounds simple enough. Not quite. Most people think in the House of Prayer that this booklet is to govern the people, not the leaders, namely the bishop. But it doesn't say the Constitution and bylaws for the government of all people of the Church on the Rock of the Apostolic Faith. It says it's for the government of the United House of Prayer for all people. It doesn't say for the government of the people. It says the United House of Prayer for all people. That seems like it's simple enough. However, it's not. Who is the House of Prayer? Now, we're going to get to that in just a moment, but it goes over when it was adopted and the amendments. It was amended 1962, 1963, 1973 by Bishop W. McCullough's successor to Bishop Grace. I would like to go back and look at every copy. However, let's go forward so that we can see what this is telling us before we go back. Let's jump to May 1992. It was amended. And May 2002, it was amended again by Bishop S.C. Madison's successor. Okay. May 2009, it was amended by Bishop C.M. Bailey's successor and leader. Now, before we go any further, we already have a problem. We already have a problem. If you turn to, oh, I'm sorry. Let me come back. We're going to go forward, then go back, like I said. Adopted amendments to the Constitution and bylaws of the United House of Prayer for all people of the Church on the Rock of the Apostolic Faith. May 2009 is what we're reading here, and going to the next page. Adopted amendments to the Constitution and bylaws of the United House of Prayer for All People of the Church on the Rock of the Apostolic Faith, as recommended by a committee duly designated and constituted for the purpose by the General Assembly of 1962. Now, it says that the adopted amendments to the Constitution, as recommended by a committee duly designated and constituted for the purpose by the General Assembly of 1962. That gives the impression that the General Assembly set up a committee to recommend the amendments to the Constitution. That's how it reads. It gives that impression. Let's continue. The amendments set forth, this next paragraph, the amendments set forth in this Constitution and bylaws were proposed by this committee, so designated by the General Assembly of 1962 and adopted by unanimous vote of the General Assembly of May 1963 at Washington, D.C. The articles which were amended are as follows. And it shows Article 2, Article 5, Article 7, and Article 15. And it shows what section in each article. It says the general, now again, going back to the beginning of that second paragraph, the amendments set forth in this Constitution were proposed by this committee. Gives the impression that the committee proposed, they made proposals. It also gives the impression that the General Assembly voted on them. I say give the impression because we don't have the specific dates and the numbers. So we can only go by what we have unless we have the original Constitution. Let's go forward. The General Assembly of May 1973 duly adopted by unanimous vote Article 6, Section 2 of the Constitution and bylaws of this organization. In the General Assembly meeting of May 27, 1977, this amendment, Article 6, Section 2, was reconfirmed by unanimous vote of the General Assembly, and it gives the numbers. The pastors, representatives, elders present made a total of 492 members who voted. Now, it looks like this number's off because I'm looking at 122 pastors. That suggests that there's 122 congregations, 228 representatives. If there's 122 pastors and there's one pastor per congregation, then there should be 244 representatives. Now, that number is broken up because it has 228 representatives and 142 elders present. Within the 142 elders present, it looks like some of them are representatives, but they wrote it wrong. And when you're doing legal documentation, you must be very, very, very specific with everything. Because this has 228 representatives, the argument could be made that they did not have the full count of representatives at this General Assembly, because there's supposed to be 2 reps for every congregation. If there's 122 pastors, there should be 244 representatives, along with elders. Now, we'll come back to the elders portion. And it says, signed by the Honorable W. McCullough, Bishop. It does say at the end of that paragraph, the articles which were amended are as follows. Now, if you go down to the bottom paragraph, the Constitutional Revision Committee, a standing committee of the General Assembly, heretofore duly designated and constituted for the purpose, after due deliberation, made the following recommendations as a revision of the Constitution and bylaws of the United House of Prayer for All People of the Church on the Rock of the Apostolic Faith. It goes on to say the referenced sites set forth herein below accurately reflect the revisions proposed by this committee. Again, it shows a constitutional revision committee. Now, this is the first time it shows that. It says in the first time, at the top of that page, the amendments set forth in this Constitution bylaws were proposed by this committee, but the committee at the top, you do not see a constitutional revision committee. It simply says, as recommended by a committee, duly designated and constituted for the purpose by the General Assembly of 1962, the third and the fourth line. Down the bottom paragraph, it says the Constitutional Revision Committee. Where did it come from? Where does the law give the authority for a Constitutional Revision Committee to be made up? This says that the Constitutional Revision Committee, a standing committee of the General Assembly. Where's that anywhere in writing? What gives a body called the Constitution Revision Committee the authority to come together for the purposes of revising the Constitution? There's no law that gives that authority. None. But there it is in black and white. And it says the Constitutional Revision Committee, as if this is legitimate. A standing committee of the General Assembly, heretofore duly designated and constituted for the purpose, after due deliberation, they made the following recommendations as a revision of the Constitution and bylaws of the United House of Prayer for All People. They made recommendations. My question would be, were those recommendations made to the General Assembly, or were they made to the congregations? And you're going to understand that question in a little bit. Let's move on. The referenced sites set forth herein below accurately reflect the revisions proposed by this committee. It sounds like the committee drew up a proposal. Proposal was approved and went out to all the congregations, giving the congregations the opportunity to vote on them. Now, let me explain the process. This is where your orientation comes in. The General Assembly is a meeting held once a year for the purposes of the members throughout the organization to come together in Washington, D.C. in order to discuss and make any changes, revisions, whatever, to the Constitution. The General Assembly comes together one time every single year for one purpose and one purpose only. That is to talk about this book. That is it. The purpose of the General Assembly is to talk about this book every single year. That's how important this book is, to where people all over the organization, they're going to fly, ride buses, ride trains, drive their cars to Washington, D.C. to talk about this little book every single year. It is mandatory that 3 people come from every single house of prayer to talk about this book. Now, I want to get too comfortable. I'm at 19 minutes, 20 minutes. Okay. When they come together, it is supposed to be a pastor and 2 delegates. The 2 delegates represent the congregations. They nominate and they elect them to send them to Washington. Before they do that, knowing that this meeting is coming up, all the congregations are sent a packet. The packet is to give the pastor instructions for all the congregations to come together so that they can have conversation in the event that someone says, I want to make changes to the Constitution, or we need to make changes. So they send a packet. The pastor's supposed to say, we have a packet as proposals to the Constitution. Before we send this back to Washington, we need to talk about this packet. So his job is to open it up. There's supposed to be instructions inside, coming from the General Assembly Secretary, telling the pastors everything that they're supposed to do with that packet. They're supposed to open it. They're supposed to take it out. They're supposed to read every single thing out loud to the members of every congregation. They're supposed to read the proposals, one proposal at a time. The members are supposed to then ask questions about that one proposal. The members and the pastor talk about the one proposal so that they can understand it even more. When they're done talking about it, then somebody can make a motion that they open the floor for a vote. They then take the opportunity to vote on that proposal. If they like it, and they get more than half of the members say, I like this proposal, we should send this on to Washington, then that proposal passes for that house and it goes to the side. The pastor read the next proposal and it goes through the same process. The next proposal, same process, next proposal, same process. Now let's say that there's 4 proposals to bring about 4 changes or additions to the Constitution. The first one, the people like. The last 3, trash. We don't like these. Vote no, no, no. So the list going to Washington is supposed to have the 2 delegates that the House voted on and the alternate. An alternate member is somebody who's going to replace a delegate in the event that the delegate, one of them, can't go. Last minute change, the alternate becomes the delegate. They go to Washington. Now, before all of that happens, the pastor sends that packet. The delegates, the alternate, and the results of the votes on the proposal to Washington. This congregation voted for yes, proposal number 1, no for 2, 3, 4. 3, no, 1, yes. Those votes get to Washington for those proposals. In D.C., now, they're supposed to take proposal number 1 and count all of the votes from the organization for proposal number 1. If they get more than 50% of the houses of prayers for proposal number 1, then proposal number 1 gets set to the side, and that is going to go forward to the General Assembly. Proposal number 2, your house said no. If they get more than 50% that says no, it gets kicked to the side. 51%, however, they said yes. Okay, so since more than 50% said yes, that now goes to the General Assembly. The last 2, over half of the congregations around the organization said no, we don't like those last 2. But 51% said yes or more for 1 and 2. So the General Assembly, now you have 2 proposals that's going to go forward. They were passed on. 2 proposals didn't make it. So now they get cast to the side. They've been stricken. They're dead now. They cannot go forward. The members of the congregations have spoken. You did not get 50% or more to say yes, they're done. The proposal committee is actually supposed to send the results back to all the houses of prayers to let them know the results of the votes on the proposals. and they're supposed to let everybody know proposal number 1 and proposal number 2 passed 50% of the vote organization-wide. They will be passed on now to the General Assembly. Why is that important? Because let's say that there's a House that said, I don't like proposal number 1 nor proposal number 2. Well, now they can have discussions again about both of these proposals and see if there's any changes in anybody's mind. Now, they tell their delegates, we still don't like proposal number 1. We want you to vote no on that. But we're okay with number 2. We want you to pass it. So now when they go, in their notes, they have that the House that they represent said no for proposal number 1. The House that they represent said yes for proposal number 2, which means when they get there, they're not supposed to say, well, I like proposal number 1, and I'm going to go ahead and vote for yes. Forget my congregation. I like this. And I don't like number 2, so I'm going to go ahead and say no. You don't represent yourself. You represent the congregation. So they let you know what they want. A lot of times it hasn't gone that way, but that's how it's supposed to go. So now, when they get there, do they have the right to change their mind? Yes, they do. Because even though the House voted, there might be some conversation that comes up at the General Assembly about proposal number 1 that they say, you know what, I didn't know that. The congregation didn't know that about proposal number 1. I'm glad that somebody from over here mentioned that because we didn't know that. So maybe that's not such a good idea. And I'm going to let the House know that that's not a good idea. You do not want proposal number 1. So then when that goes to a vote and they put it up for a vote, then instead of saying yes, I'm going to say no with good reason. If you don't have a good reason, then you're supposed to say yes because the House said yes. But then if you go back, I voted against it because y'all don't want that. And so rather than say yes and it went into the Constitution, I vote no. Now, that proposal might still get 2/3. In order for it to pass, you don't get 51% at the General Assembly. That proposal's got to get 2/3, over 66% of the vote. Out of those that's there, must say yes before that vote is passed, because it's going to change and affect the Constitution. So it can't just win by 51%. It's got to get 66% or more. If it does not get 66%, that proposal is dead. Now the next proposal comes up and you repeat the process. That's how it's supposed to go in all fairness. So what happens is you have proposals that go out to the congregations and each one is read. One proposal might make it to the General Assembly alone out of all the congregations. None of them might not make it out of all the congregations, or 3 of them. Maybe all 4 of them might get passed to the General Assembly. But how are the members supposed to know what's going to go to the General Assembly? Because the General Assembly Secretary is supposed to send back the results. Again, this is why the results are supposed to come back to the houses so that they can continue to talk about them again for their delegates. But there's another reason, more importantly than that. How does the organization know which proposal was turned down by the houses? So the purpose of the General Assembly Secretary supposedly sending back the results is because on that list, the results of the proposals, there should also be a list of all the houses combined showing the results of your vote. Not just your house. Now, it can be, and the members can argue, well, our house shot it down. Well, how did your other house vote? We don't know. We didn't get the results of that. This is not supposed to be so secretive. There's nothing that needs to be secretive about this. The houses voting on Proposal A, here are the results. Out of 137 houses for Proposal A, 100 said no. Those houses are, even if you have numbers, but you have all that printed out. Why? It's transparent. There's nothing to hide. And then you check your house. Wait a minute, is that accurate? Okay, yeah, we said yeah. Okay, well, ours is right. Ours is right. Yours right. Yeah, everybody's is right. Now you're fully transparent. But without the results of the vote, how does the organization know that they're not lying? They say, well, no, we want this. And even though the members don't like it, we're going to pass it on anyway. And they can do that because there's no results from the vote going back to the houses. You don't know whether the General Assembly Secretary made it up or not. So there should be a result that goes back to you so that you can confirm that fairness has been done. And now, according to the proposal procedure, these proposals are on their way to the General Assembly. But not one proposal is supposed to go to the General Assembly if it does not go through the houses first. And this is why these constitutions are illegal. Because the amendments that went into these constitutions, they did not go through the local houses of prayers. They were not voted on by the members of the houses of prayers. And those 46 changes to the Constitution was not voted individually, independent of one another, one at a time, giving the members the opportunity to shoot down whichever ones they did not like and whichever ones they did not want. They could have shot down the entire list of 46 changes if they wanted to, because the power to amend the Constitution rests in the hands of the members, not the bishop, not the council, not the General Assembly. And so what you're about to learn in the Constitution is how to get your power back. Because this council, this General Assembly Secretary, this bishop business, these three offices have robbed the organization blind of the powers that you possess in order to oversee the bishop and the general council and the General Assembly Secretary. The most powerful people in the organization are the members of the organization, never the bishop of the House of Prayer, never the council of the House of Prayer, and never the General Assembly Secretary. You hold all the power, and you're about to learn why. See you in the next video.